who has been your biggest riser and the player that you're really excited about? Hit us with him.
Well, I'm going to go to the mid-major wide receiver U and go to SMU wide receiver RASHEE Rice.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the station. Welcome back to the channel. It's your host, Ray G, joined, as always, by our talented scouting department, Keith Sanchez, Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino, and Damian Parson. This is the TDN 100 November update, and this is going to be fun because we're talking about each individual scout's biggest riser from this November subset, and I have no clue who they're going to talk about. Hopefully it's somebody that I like, but we will find out very shortly. Keith, for you, college football season, we wrapped up. We've been scouting, following these guys. We know what NFL teams are lacking. So for you, who has been your personal biggest riser from this TDN November update?
Man, listen, so from last year's draft to last year's class to this year's draft, the safety class has been lacking, right? We don't have the top end names like we had with last year. And so I got a chance to watch Georgia safety Christopher Smith. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be extremely aggressive on this dude, man. I like what I've seen. I like what I've seen every game, every snap. This guy's 5'11", 200 pounds. He plays physical, but guess what? When you put him on the back end of the defense, he shows range, man. And number one thing for me with safety is, can you get your hands on the football? And he showcased time and time again that he can get his hands on the football, and he's a versatile defender. So for me, it's definitely a defensive back from Georgia, Christopher Smith.
What's his calling card, Keith? Is he more of a ball hawking, patrol the secondary type safety, or is he down in the box, aggressive in the run game? If you had to put your stamp on it, where's his strongest skill set at?
Man, I think that's what makes him, I don't go as far as special, but that's what makes him a really talented football player, is that I think he can do both effectively. And that's big in a safety, right? To know that we don't know if you're going to be, the free safety, strong safety, be able to roll into the box, roll coverages. So for Christopher Smith, I think he can do both. And I think that's what's going to be really intriguing for NFL teams going down the stretch for this upcoming NFL draft.
Kyle, for you, who's the guy that's risen the most for you this subset?
You said you were hoping for guys that we liked, and I think you got a helmet floating around back there for Tuli Tuipulotu, defensive lineman for the USC Trojans. And I watched this dude in the summertime, and he led the team in sacks, I believe, with 5.5 sacks and 7.5 tackles for loss, and listed at 290. And I thought he was kind of a tight alignment defensive end and a good player, but I graded him as an early day 3. So he didn't make the initial ballots for us when we did TDN 100. We checks in at 52 in the update here in November because I've seen the production that had blown up, but I said, let me wait until I get a chance to actually watch him to see how that production is coming and how it's different. This cat is a totally different animal this year as far as the dynamic athleticism that he is providing. I was expecting this guy to be a guy who just wins with power. I'm watching him in stunts, and he's bending on inside gaps, and he's chasing stuff down from the backside, and he is just playing like a man possessed with his hair on fire. And it's been a really kind of pleasant revelation for me versus a guy who I didn't know had that kind of juice to his game, but he's definitely leveled up here in 2022 along with the rest of the USC program as they continue their push for the postseason here. And they're going to, if they get into the dance, I think they've got a legit chance to beat anybody because they have a couple of guys who are playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, like Tuipulotu is.
And let me just ask you, and I don't need you to dive back into the scouting report from I don't know how many years ago, but watching a lot of USC ball, does he kind of remind you a little bit of Adrian Claiborne from Iowa? He played with the Falcons for a while. I look at him and I'm looking at his body type and I'm like, I don't know how this dude's so explosive. He's always in the backfield. Doesn't look like the guy that you would think should be playing on the outside. But, what type of draft capital do you think he could potentially get with a strong playoff push?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple defensive ends, and I know we collectively as a group with this update are talking about the defensive lineman. We talked about a lot of different types, but he is a little bit of a different body type than all of those guys. And I think teams, if you're looking for 3 down guys, I think where Tuipulotu can really move the needle is you can put him on the outside and you can line him up. You can play your 5 technique or your head up on your defensive or your offensive tackles. He can shade inside and play a 4-eye. but you get into obvious passing down situations as well. You can bring more speed on the field and kick him down, and he can rush in the B gaps and the A gaps. And I think, you got a player who has this level of explosiveness and fluidity, who all of a sudden the recipe is calling for potentially playing 80+% of your snaps. That's a top 50 pick, I think, based on the athleticism that he's shown this year, the production and the growth as a player. The instincts are there. He's got an incredible nose for the ball, and he finishes his splash play opportunities. So I wouldn't be surprised if this guy ends up going in the top 50 when it's all said and done.
Let's get it. Fight on, Trojans. Let's get it. Fight on, USC. DP, give us somebody, man. We're talking all these defensive guys. We're talking safeties. We're talking DNs. Who do you got an offensive guy for us, DP? Or are you sticking on the defensive side of the ball for your biggest riser?
Ray, you know I love offense, baby, and I got to go to TCU, man. My biggest riser is QUENTIN Johnston, who he was around wide receiver 2, wide receiver. He's my wide receiver 1 right now.
Whoa.
Perfect blend. Yeah, he's my wide receiver 1. He went from, in the 30s to now he's at 13. And I just look at the fact of, you talk about a prototypical X receiver that meets all the height, weight, and speed requirements. 6'4", 215 pounds, supposed to jump from what I was told 40 plus, and a potential 4.3 in the 40. You can't ask for any more than that, right? So you turn on the tape. I think it was against Texas. They're playing 2-man trail, and they got the safety creeping over the top. They're trying to play physical, and he starts beating them over the top. He started beating double teams, and I'm like, man, if you think about the simple fact that if this young man was in a more pass-happy offense, you put him with Caleb Williams or Bryce Young or some of these other high-profile passers, he's going to be a 12 to 1,300-yard receiver. But he plays for TCU, and they do a lot of different things. So for me, I love what I see from him, and projecting him to the league, I said, man, if I want an X receiver, let me get QUENTIN Johnston, baby.
DP, I'm going to force you. I'm going to challenge you to explain to people watching this, because here's the reality, all right? The reality is, we understand you scout the player, you don't scout the helmet. Every prospect is different. But one of the things that I think a lot of people are going to struggle with QUENTIN Johnston is the failure of 2 high-profile TCU wide receivers recently, Josh Doxson and Jalen Reagor. So just explain to us why this is different, why QUENTIN Johnston is different than outside of the size, right? He's bigger than Reagor, he's bigger than Doxson, but why should people who are interested in this wide receiver not be fearful of TCU wide receivers? Because that's going to be something that comes up throughout this process, regardless of how big or how fast he is. People are going to be worried about their team investing high draft capital in another TCU wide receiver.
No, that's a great question, Ray. I think for me, the best way I can explain it is just looking at not just his physical frame, but of course the athleticism, the IQ. He's playing 2 different offenses, and even in this offense with the coach from SMU, they've reduced his route tree because of the offense that they've run. So he can do a lot more than what he's put on tape this season. So for me, I look at those other guys, and with Doxson and Reagor, they weren't that polished to me. They weren't the best athletes, or they didn't check some of the other boxes that QUENTIN Johnston checks. I've seen him beat man coverage. I've seen him beat zone consistently. He's got twitch. For a guy his size, he's an unreal mover. He kind of has shout out to BC. One of the coaches there told me he calls it the Hakeem Olajuwon spin. If you turn on the Kansas tape, when he runs the hooks, the 10-yard hook curl, and when he catches it, he gives him that dream shake, baby, and he spins off of it. And then from there on, now it's a foot race. So he's just a different type of cat, I would say.
There it is. Appreciate that, DP. Joe, close us out. Who has been your biggest riser and the player that you're really excited about? Hit us with him.
Well, I'm going to go to the mid-major wide receiver U and go to SMU wide receiver RASHEE Rice. I mean, literally, this guy might be our biggest riser over this update of any player. I mean, he jumped over 40 spots now in our top 50, and it's well-deserved. He's had a sensational season for SMU. And for me, what it really came down to is, how was he going to respond to the opportunity that he was going to have this year with more targets, right? He's doubled up his targets from last year, and he's answered the call. He's had a ton of production at all levels of the field. And as you just continue to enjoy watching his tape, you start asking yourself, what can he do? Like, what's missing here? This guy's got size. He's got explosiveness. He's got unbelievable body control and ball skills. I think he's a dynamic route runner with what he's been tasked with to this point. He wins after the catch. He's got that uncanny ability to catch a football and make that first guy miss and then get up the field. I mean, he wins outside. He wins inside. He's really answered all the questions, and you start to really have to ask yourself, what are the concerns here? And you really kind of have a hard time coming up with the answer to that question. And as he's continued to validate his resume and prove what he is every week this year, you can't help but acknowledge it and skyrocket him up the board. And so quite literally, this guy was one of the biggest risers. And for me as well, personally, I'm the regional scout responsible for SMU. I certainly watched RASHEE Rice over the summer. And the big question was, all right, here comes the big opportunity, right? They lost some players at receiver. You knew he was going to get more opportunity, and he answered the call in a big way. And, look, this is a surefire, maybe even late first round caliber prospect.
And that's what I was going to ask you, Joe. Is there a chance, right? There's a chance because you have a mock draft that just dropped 4.0. And, Jackson Smith-Njigba wasn't in the first round of that mock. He was 35 to the Seattle Seahawks. Is there a chance that RASHEE Rice jumps up into that first round with NFL teams wanting to get those pass catchers? I watch him. I love him. SMU's history of wide receivers, Cole Beasley, Cortland Sutton, Emmanuel Sanders. Is there a chance for this guy to be drafted top 32?
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate conversation worth having. And if he doesn't go top 32, he won't wait long to hear his name called. I think he's got a chance to be, one of those really high quality number 2 receivers, and maybe even for some teams might be a number 1. He's got all the stuff, guys, and you guys have heard me talk a lot about him over the last month or so, and I've seen that reflected in the way that you guys stacked him as well. We have heard the gospel of RASHEE Rice and adjusted our rankings accordingly.
And because I'm the host, we were supposed to just go through one. I just want rapid fire, one name. Give me one more big ride, because I know, DP, I'm watching you down there. I know you're itching. Joe's talking about RASHEE Rice. Keith is dropping safeties. Just one player name, no analysis. Another guy that's been a big riser for you, rapid fire, DP. What's the name?
Oh, man. Kobe Wooden. Defensive lineman from Auburn.
Thank you. Kyle?
Devin Witherspoon, cornerback from Illinois.
All right. Joe?
Go Emmanuel Forbes, corner from Mississippi State.
Good call.
Keith? Close us out.
I'm going Christian Gonzalez, cornerback from Oregon, man.
There it is. There it is. Biggest risers from our scouts. We appreciate it. This was a good one. A lot of good names were brought up today. And, there's still a lot of time within this process. So I'm sure with the next update and the update after that and more information that we gather with testing, with measurables, and with which players actually declare and which ones decide to stay in school, we'll have another rendition of this with some other additional risers as well. But for Keith Sanchez, Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino, Damian Parson, and the Draft Network, we appreciate you being here. Tap into everything that what you're doing. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, like the content, comment below, turn those alerts on, and most importantly, join the TDN Premium Discord channel. Until next time, for Ray, for TDN, we're out. Peace.